All right, everyone, jumping into all the top prop bets here for week one on this NFL Sunday. And so I will be doing just kind of a game overview, which games we want to be targeting specifically. But just looking at guys right now, we do have a ton of props available, right? It is week one of the NFL season, a bunch of props available. For the most part, I'm going to be sticking to the normal prop, which are going to be passing yards, rush yards, receiving yards, fantasy score. That's a little bit more unique. I do think that there is kind of a big edge there. And really just these ones on the top bar here, honestly. Once we start to get into all these other ones, I don't mind receiving targets. Like, I am kind of a big target guy. I feel like that's one of the easiest, if not the easiest stat to predict. But like this week, I don't really see a big edge there just yet. But that's something I'm keeping an eye on for the season. Maybe rush attempts, but like we start to get into all these weird ones. Rush yards in the first 5 attempts, like that's a weird one. Same thing with completions in the first 10 pass attempts. Like these are all weird ones. Okay, so I don't want to be going crazy with those. Okay, so I'll be touching on all that in this video. But I do want to start out with the sportsbook screen here because I feel like it's very useful because we can kind of see which games we want to be targeting. Like for instance, the Cincinnati Bengals versus Cleveland Browns game, 47.5. That's a very high over and under for this game. That's probably a game that we want to be targeting as a result. It's only a 2.5 spread as well, so we don't really have to worry about a blowout too much. And then maybe here's a game, maybe we're potentially looking at some unders. 38 for an over and under between Washington and Arizona. Now, Washington is a 7-point favorite, as they should be. The Cardinals are starting Joshua Dobbs, but this is kind of the way I like to look at it, just to see if there's any games that stand out. And as it sits right now, nothing too crazy. Now, the nice thing about this kind of feature is that we can pull up kind of the injury report. So just real quickly, we do see that DJ Chark, and I'm going to go game by game here real quick, guys. DJ Chark is out. We know that. Adam Thielen, currently questionable. Got to see the news on him. In terms of Atlanta, nothing too crazy that we need to worry about injury-wise. So that is good news there. Let's go on to this next game. We got Houston versus Baltimore. Once again, nothing too crazy. We do need to see the news on someone like Mark Andrews if he's going to play, but for Houston, no one too significant. Bengals versus Cleveland here. Nothing too crazy injury news-wise. Jaguars versus Colts, a little bit. We got Zach Moss currently listed as doubtful. Okay, so that's going to mean someone like Deion Jackson. Maybe there's some props that pop up for him. I do think he is someone that should be getting involved in the passing game a little bit. It's just a matter of not if Anthony Richards can hit him or not. Good news for these two teams, the Vikings and the Buccaneers, not banged up. Now, the Titans versus the Saints. Now, we do have some interesting injury news here, specifically for the Saints. They're going to be without Smith, where not a big deal there, but they're most likely going to be without Keandre Miller as well, okay? That's going to leave Kurt Merritt as like the second string running back because we already know Alvin Kamara is suspended. That's going to mean that it's going to be a lot of Jamal Williams. And for what it's worth, one of the best props that we have available, it looks like on this slate, and it already was Jamal Williams for over rushing attempts. This was at like 55.5% yesterday. PrizePicks has since bumped it to 15, which is what he's projecting it. But the average sportsbook line is saying 14.5 rushing attempts for Jamal Williams. It makes sense, especially in that game against the Titans, although they were pretty weak against the pass last year. But he's going to get a lot of work. I kind of wish this was opportunities, but still a pretty good one there. Makes sense. And so that's where when that popped up as like a prop bet yesterday, like to me, that was something that I just had to really go in on. And obviously, you guys see Jordan Love here. I'll touch on that in just a second, but that was something I really wanted to take advantage of. And for what it's worth, you guys are seeing this new tool available on the 9 to 5 PrizePicks cheat sheet. This is going to be available under the NFL tab. You click on that, and we got this little cheat sheet. Slightly a work in progress. I'm working through it, but you know, I think it looks nice. Now, continuing on, we got the Niners versus the Steelers here. Okay, so looking at these two teams, really nothing too crazy. We got to see if George Kittle is going to play or not. That would change kind of that dynamic of who we need to be on for that game. George Kittle would pop up as someone, Christian McCaffrey would probably pop up as someone that would get more receptions. Deebo Samuel as well, and even potentially Brandon Ayuk. I know a lot of people in DFS are really gassing him up as well. I do think we would see a little bit more manufactured touches to Samuel and also CMC though, receptions wise. So for Washington, Terry McLaurin is expected to be back. So Jahan Dotson, there were some prop bets that I went in on him earlier on when it seemed like he was going to sit. No, he is going to be active. That is actually probably going to help out Sam Howell in some capacity. Maybe someone we could look at for fantasy score because, well, they are going to be up, and maybe we're looking at Brian Robinson fantasy score wise, or some sort of prop like that, maybe rushing attempts. And actually, just real quickly, guys, I like that thought a lot. 7-point favorites. It's not the highest scoring game, but let's just see. Oh, man, guys, I like this prop, I think. Whew. Brian Robinson, 14.5 rushing attempts. I like the over there. I'm going to write this one down. Very much game theory. And I don't know if you guys ever listened to Christopher Harris from Harris Football. Pretty good podcast if you guys don't. He always says, well, you can't predict game flow. I guess a good example of that was that Chiefs versus Lions game. The game flow of that game kind of got thrown off with the drop INT pick 6. Kadarius Toney dropped it, pick 6 for the Lions. Like, you can't predict that stuff happening. That changed the flow of the game. And so you can't always predict that. But Brian Robinson for over 14.5 rushing attempts is something that's standing out to me, guys. Just simply kind of thinking it through. Why were his rushing attempts all over in these games? Either the game's close or they're playing with the lead. And so Vegas says that they're going to be playing with the lead. That to me is a prop that we should probably be betting then, because we saw consistently last season him being able to get the over in those games. Now, I know Gibson's look good and whatnot. He is the passing down back, third down back. I still think we're going to see Robinson be able to get those rushing attempts. And then, on the flip side of it, it does seem like Zach Ertz might have a slight chance to play. Marquise Brown currently questionable. Rondale Moore has been someone that I kind of have been looking at a little bit more and more. Like, even in season long leagues, I'm kind of thinking about him. And guys, isn't it weird how every single Moore that there is, Rondale Moore, Elijah Moore, Sky Moore, DJ Moore. I guess he's the good DJ. He's a good Moore, but they're all kind of the same player, like possession receivers, short yardage-ish guys, gonna make you miss type players. It's just weird. Now, continuing on, guys, one of the things I'm most tilted about from week 1 is, a lot of you guys probably know this, I hammered a lot of Christian Watson props season long. His receiving touchdowns were 4.5 to start the season. Extremely low. That since got bumped up to 5.5. I still think that's going to be a good bet. Obviously, though, him being out with a hamstring, you don't like that, especially for a player like him, who it's burst related. Like, if he loses a step, obviously we don't like that. Romeo Dobbs as well, currently questionable. One of the best props that we had available, really, at the start was looking at some sort of Jordan Love prop. Now, I will touch on him in a little bit here, the rushing prop, and I'll just pull that up right now. This seems to be way too low for Jordan Love. Just if you look at what he did in the preseason. Ooh, all right. I didn't see this one. Saquon Barkley, total yards. Going to use that one. So there you go. Guys, if you guys want to take advantage of that too as well, make sure to use the 95 promo code. That'll give you 100% match on a deposit of up to $100. That does just help out my channel as well. It helps kick back a little bit of money to me. But looking at it right now, guys, we see what Jordan Love did this preseason. I am using Underdog just because they have those stats listed. He had 21 rushing attempts in the last game, or 21 rushing yards in the last game, and 11 in the game against New England. Didn't do too much against the Bengals, okay? But this was all playing 3 to 4 series, not even a full half, basically a quarter's worth. And he looked very good in the pocket. We saw him take off to rush the football. Given the fact that Christian Watson and Dobbs are both, banged up, Watson's out, maybe he just looks to pull the ball down and run with it a little bit more, because obviously you're taking a big step down talent-wise from Christian Watson to maybe Malik Heath. And so maybe he just decides to pull it and run a little bit more. That was the one thing that really impressed me the most about him this preseason, is his ability to rush the football, his pocket presence as well with that. So we do see that this rushing yard prop on Underdog is 13.5. So we'll see that this number that we're getting on PrizePicks is probably a little bit too low as well. I think that he has a great chance to get this really in 1 or 2 rushes, and obviously that's probably always going to get maybe 4 max, but still it's probably going to be there. And then just continuing on, Denver versus Raiders, nothing too much there. Javonte Williams does seem like he's going to play. Jerry Jeudy, we need to see the injury news on. It seems like he's going to sit, so probably looking at Courtland Sutton. Hopefully guys were able to get that Courtland Sutton, Russell Wilson stack earlier, about 2 weeks ago now. Philly versus New England. Yeah, a lot of their receivers are kind of iffy, like Juju's kind of banged up. Parker's kind of banged up. I wouldn't be surprised if someone like Demario Douglas is involved, but that's not something we're going to be betting on. This is something that just popped up, I see, or last night. Rhamondre Stevenson, currently questionable with the illness. I obviously expect him to play, but that's interesting there. The game that I like the most in terms of stacking purposes is going to be the Chargers versus the Dolphins. Now, the Dolphins do seem like they're going to have some of the running backs back healthy. Devon Achan's going to be there. Ahmed is going to be there. And it does seem like Jeff Wilson Jr. in week 4 is going to be healthy and ready to go by then. I still think it's going to be the Mostert show, though. And then these other 2 games, guys, I'm going to be touching on a separate video, Sunday Night Football and Monday Night Football. So a lot of fluff at the start here. I apologize, but let's go in and get into kind of the picks for week 1. All right, so showing you guys this new tool available. What it is going to be comparing both the sportsbooks projection, the projection data, and this is coming in from 5 different sources. The sportsbooks is coming in from, about 7 to 20 different sportsbooks, depending on the prop that we have available. So these are kind of just cumulative averages there. They're just averages. That makes more sense. Then we have the underdog line as well, which for something like fantasy score, I'll show you guys that, does slightly throw off the data just because underdog compared to PrizePicks, slightly different scoring, half point PPR compared to full point PPR. But in situations where the quarterback, obviously we don't really care, but I just want to call that out for you guys. And then it just puts into like a percent of edge. Now you will see something like this where like Derek Carr, where it's a very low rush total, the percent edge, if you will, is going to be a little bit different. But what I like about this is we have the over and under right here. We can see what the over and under is, not only the line, but the percent likelihood, and then also the under for both as well. So I just like that as well. And so we can see the over tag, the bet tag with what we are getting from the percent as well. So I think it's going to be a useful tool. I just want to kind of educate a little bit there on kind of some of the nuances of it. So what we are seeing is going to be something like Trevor Lawrence. And so we can see Trevor Lawrence, 1.5 passing TDs. Now let's go ahead and take a peek at that game again, see if it's going to be a higher scoring game or a game that we want to avoid. 45, not too crazy. The Colts, I would say it's kind of surprising that they're only 5-point dogs, the Colts, compared to the Jaguars. Everyone expects the Jaguars to be good, but Trevor Lawrence had already been someone that I was kind of targeting a little bit for passing yards. I gave you guys some stacks with him and Calvin Ridley. So we see that we want to be betting 1.5 for the passing touchdowns here for Trevor Lawrence. 54% chance for that hit. We love that. Projected at 1.8. Like that as well. Kind of wish it was higher than that, but we'll take that. So what I want to do is I want to find a way that we can stack with Trevor Lawrence. And so I just typed in Jacksonville or Jack. So let's just see here. We got Calvin Ridley at 63.5 receiving yards. I would say if Trevor Lawrence is probably throwing for 2 touchdowns, maybe that's a decent one. 5 receptions you could roll with as well. Really, I think Calvin Ridley is going to have a good game. From there, Christian Kirk, what are we going to expect from him? I don't really know, guys. I think the issue with this team is it could end up being like a good version, I guess, of the Kansas City Chiefs, where the production's a little bit more spread out than we would like. Probably going to be a little bit more predictable in terms of who it is, because it's going to be Kirk, Zay Jones a little bit, Evan Ingram a little bit, Tank Bigsby a little bit, Travis Etienne a little bit, but mostly I think it'll be Calvin Ridley. But also, we don't know that for sure. And so what we're seeing here is I don't feel like we have a big edge here at all with any of these. And I was wishing that we would have got some, maybe fantasy score wise. We don't. I think we'd be fine just running out a solo stack with those two. I would say maybe you could stack Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley. And I should probably explain this, guys. The point of running out a stack like this is if we can find a correlation between the two. Obviously, Trevor Lawrence, 54% chance for him to get over 1.5 passing touchdowns. We can sometimes find a correlated bet with that. I'm not seeing that right now, though. And for what it's worth, let me just pull up the odds jam optimizer as well, see if they have any good prop out there. And I mean, nothing too crazy. Maybe just rolling with Calvin Ridley here or potentially Evan Ingram. Not terrible. And then for what it's worth, while I'm on the screen, we can see, Jamal Williams, guys, probably pretty undervalued across the board. Rushing, receiving yards, he's going to get a lot of work. So we got rushing yards as well. Those are 2 of the best props available on the slate. Then we have some kind of other interesting ones here. I don't think we really need to be jamming any of those into our slips. Not bad. You guys see one that you like here? I'm for it. I do find this interesting. So let's say George Kittle's out. This is kind of interesting. I would agree. Debo over 4 receptions. And probably Brandon, you could be someone that honestly probably just more likely to be a push than over or under. While we're here, Adams, Tyreek Hill, I don't mind those. Those are not terrible, but all interesting. So with Jamal Williams, we are definitely getting some interesting props. That's going to be the chalk one that misses, right? Too good to be true. And now I just kind of want to touch on some of the props that are kind of my personal favorites. Getting away from the EV stuff. Well, let's touch on that real quick. So any other EV bets, we do see the Trevor Lawrence one there. Pat Freiermuth is actually casually popping up as well. The only issue I have with him, he's only projected to get 3.43 receptions, where the line is set at 3.5. So not exactly one that I'm going out of my way to target. T. Higgins kind of the same thing there. Like these are all okay. Don't love any of them particularly. This one I found interesting. So it does make sense. Like maybe Carolina's playing from behind. I would say that's maybe what would occur. Miles Sanders under 15.5 rushing attempts. Projected to get 17.3 though, so I don't love that. But a 54% chance for that one to hit. So maybe you want to roll with that. And then from there, this was actually one that on paper I liked the over on was Nico Collins for like 4 receptions. I feel like that's a pretty good one. I know CJ Stroud maybe will run the football a little bit more. But that was one where I'm like, he's probably going to average at least 4 on the season. I thought that on the season was one where we got an edge. Same thing with Treylon Burks. Like maybe if he's healthy, I think we have a decent stacking opportunity with him, Ryan Tannehill, and maybe even DeAndre Hopkins. And then just real quickly, where are we getting the biggest prop line differences? Anthony Richardson passing yards, that's only 2-yard difference, nothing too crazy. That's the biggest thing there. Where we are getting some big differences are maybe with some potential underbet opportunities here, but this is mostly going to be in the fantasy score. And for what's worth, guys, with the fantasy score, we don't have all the props that we would want coming in for the sports books, like reception, touchdowns, receiving yards, rushing touchdown. Like we don't have all those coming into it for every single player. So there are some big discrepancies there as well. We will see here, maybe Mark Andrews. Vegas has it set at 52. PrizePicks has it set at 57.5. There is a potential for you to be able to bet the under there. Rush yards for Lamar Jackson, not a big edge there, but something you could roll with if you wanted to. And so the reason why I'm trying to put an emphasis on really developing more fantasy score props here is, one, there are a bunch available, right? This is big. But 2, it's the biggest edge that we had in NBA. It was the biggest edge that we had by far in MLB, probably the biggest edge that we have in PrizePicks is MLB. I'm hoping the same for fantasy score. And so let's just talk about some maybe potential stacking opportunities. So looking at Baker Mayfield, and I think Baker Mayfield is terrible. I think he's probably one of the worst starters in the league besides some of the rookies, but he gets a great matchup this week against the Minnesota Vikings. Now, I'm not saying that we're going to bet the over for him, but man, it's tough not to love the matchup for his pass catchers. Maybe Mike Evans. I don't know if we need to force that. Although, I don't know, the situation with Mike Evans this season has just been very weird. So maybe just to stay away there. To me, I actually like Chris Godwin. We know he's a possession receiver. We know he actually did really well this preseason with Baker Mayfield. Like in limited work this preseason. Pretty good. We would take what he did, Obviously, touchdown's always great, but 4 receptions, 30 yards, and a TD, like that, we'll take that for sure. And so I really kind of think if the Minnesota Vikings defense is that bad, it's tough to see Baker Mayfield not at least being able to get the ball to his playmakers, especially Chris Godwin. So I like the over fantasy score there. And then continuing on, like J.K. Dobbins is definitely an interesting one. Gets a matchup with the Houston Texans, who were by far the worst rush defense last year. Now, how much is that due to the offense just not being that good as well, where teams are just able to keep pounding the football against them? It's tough to exactly say, but the fact of the matter is they were bad. And so J.K. Dobbins is someone that can catch the ball in the backfield as well. 10.5 does seem like a low number. To me, it feels like we're forcing it in there a little bit, but at the same time, not terrible. And for what it's worth, like Underdog has his fantasy points set at 11.65. We look at their scoring just for you guys to know this. It's 0.5 for a reception. Everything else is the same. And so this was kind of one of the ones that stood out to me. Now I know, I don't know, with the fantasy score props, I might just take out the average sportsbook odds because we don't get a full allotment of all data points on them. And so that's why it's saying under here. But if we just look at the projection, we look at the underdog line compared to the PrizePicks line, that's intriguing to me. I like that one. And it's just the fact that underdog is higher. That's just really weird to me. And then I will say, I don't know, I feel like this Cleveland versus Cincinnati game, although it is a game that's going to be kind of high scoring, I feel like it's kind of a trap. I would maybe think about the under there, honestly. And then looking at this other game, the game that I like is Tennessee versus New Orleans. I feel like it's going to be higher scoring than people think. Derek Carr gets his first game with the Saints, and I kind of like his weapons that he has. Obviously, they're a little bit banged up at the running back position. Maybe that just leads to them throwing the football a little bit more. Someone like Juwan Johnson, I feel like has been very undervalued by the fantasy community. You look at why Kyle Pitts gets hyped up. He's a receiver playing tight end, and all that stuff. I'm like, Juwan Johnson is literally a receiver playing tight end. Who was another kind of similar player like that? Darren Waller, right? And Darren Waller looked like a stud with Derek Carr throwing him the football. Now insert Juwan Johnson into those exact same scenarios. I kind of like him. So we also have Michael Thomas, who we know in his prime was one of the best receivers in the league. He needs to be healthy to play well, but he could easily do that. He could easily be healthy and play well. And then obviously Chris Olave, one of the better year number 2 receivers in the league. And the Titans were terrible last year defensively. I don't know if they exactly got better. I feel like we have a good stacking opportunity. And so I do always like to make bets based off of what Vegas thinks is going to occur. Okay, I feel like that correlates well. To me, this is me saying I think Vegas is wrong. I feel like this is going to be higher scoring. Or at least we can funnel in which players we want to be on. And so for Derek Carr, like that just doesn't take that much to get there. I know he does need to throw probably a touchdown, maybe 300 or so passing yards, maybe rushes a little bit. And then for Ryan Tannehill, he is someone that like just plays consistently well. I don't really like the Saints defense that much as well. I feel like this game has the potential to be a sneaky shootout. Jamal Williams, we see all the over bets that we want to be on for him. You could potentially roll with maybe just fantasy score as well. Doesn't really take much for him to get there. Derrick Henry is maybe the only one I'm staying away from. Chris Olave obviously gets a quarterback upgrade with Derek Carr. Could roll with him for the over. DeAndre Hopkins, obviously healthy. That's the biggest takeaway for him. 13-4 fantasy score. Maybe that's a little bit too high, but if you are betting DeAndre Hopkins for the over, I would say do it with Ryan Tannehill as well. Michael Thomas, I actually don't mind. It seems like him and Derek Carr have a pretty good chemistry there going. This is 5 receptions, 50 yards. That's not that much. Burks as well. He might actually be the 1A there. We will see. And just how the offense is going to operate, he might actually end up being the 1A. We will see. And like I said, I was gassing up Jawan Johnson. I like the fantasy score there. We have a decent stacking opportunity in this game. So I like Jawan Johnson for over fantasy score. I like Derek Carr for over fantasy score. And I like Michael Thomas for over fantasy score. And then just continuing on here, there isn't that much more that I need to touch on too much. I do feel like, sure, maybe George Pickens might be a little bit too low there. I don't mind the idea of Jahan Dotson for over his fantasy score. I do think he's going to be someone that's going to be a possession receiver this season. Obviously look really good in the preseason. For the Patriots versus the Eagles, does feel like a stay away to me there. I don't mind Russell Wilson and Courtland Sutton still, but I already got a lot of exposure to them with the Taco Tuesday stacks that I ran out a couple of weeks ago. That feels like a pretty good edge now. I will say Jacoby Myers is someone I think will be a possession receiver. I think we're going to see what we saw out of him really in New England. I don't really think his stats are going to change too much personally. I feel like he's going to have the exact same role. Obviously, having Devontae Adams there, a lot of people might say that's going to take away production. I feel like that is just going to funnel production that would spread out that, wasn't going to Jacoby Myers last year in New England. I feel like that's just going to be funneled into Devontae Adams, whereas Jacoby Myers is still going to get the work that he had last year in kind of a similar-ish system. And then, yes, I do really like the idea of maybe stacking this Chargers versus Dolphins game, but all their fantasy points are juiced up enough. I feel like the stacking opportunities for them are kind of gone as well. Now, real quickly, I am very much bummed by not having any Green Bay Packers stacks because I felt like this was going to be a smash spot for them to really just go off. I thought it was going to be a Jordan Love kind of statement game. A lot of the casuals that weren't paying attention, kind of just being lazy with their takes would be like, they would realize that because Jordan Love did look good this preseason, looked good last preseason and whatnot. With the fact that he's going to be without Christian Watson, that does worry me a little bit. But maybe because of that, and I was hoping we would get fantasy score prop, maybe we could be looking at Aaron Jones. Like, I really wish we were getting some sort of combination, whether that's fantasy score, receiving, or rushing yards, and maybe we do. But really, the only really good one to me in that game is now just going to be looking at Jordan Love for over rushing yards. I would have loved to have smashed the over passing yards there against that Chicago Bears defense. That's probably not going to be that good. Unfortunate there that Watson is out. But let's go ahead and get into my bets of the day. Now, I already mentioned that stack that we could run out for the Saints. By all means, you guys can go ahead and do that. Looking at here, we're going with the Jordan Love prop. I think that's going to be one of the better ones on the slate. Maybe gets there in garbage time as well. I don't know. My hype for the Packers as a Green Bay Packers fan really diminished with the Christian Watson news. But still, I think that's a decent edge. Game flow wise, this is very much a bet on the game flow of that game. No one expects the Arizona Cardinals to be good. And we're just hoping that this isn't a Seattle Seahawks situation where they end up being decent. I guess it wouldn't be too shocking. Zach Ertz, if he's healthy, not terrible. James Conner, not terrible as well. Brown's a good receiver. Rondale Moore, good talent. It's not going to happen. Okay. And if it doesn't, then yes, Brian Robinson should be able to get over 14.5 rushing attempts we saw consistently last year. J.K. Dobbins going against the Houston Texans rush defense that wasn't that good last year. Didn't really improve this year, so that should be a good one. Chris Godwin, same same thing. Going against that Minnesota Vikings pass defense that isn't that good. He's a possession receiver. It does seem to be a little bit of a chemistry thing going on between him and Baker Mayfield, as it should. I like that prop bet. And then a good EV bet that we're getting is Trevor Lawrence for over 1.5 passing touchdowns. And then using this one from the Odds Jam Fantasy Optimizer right here, over 61.5 rushing and receiving yards, just because he's basically the only one there. Just to remind you guys, if you guys want access to that Odds Jam Optimizer that I showed you guys, I really love the sportsbook screen here. If you guys want access to that, link is in the description below. Use the promo code 905 to get 25% off. Also, if you guys want access to my cheat sheet, it is available in the link in the description below. That's going to be available for just $10 a month. Gives you access to all the DFS tools as well. Let's have a good slate, and as always, let's keep cashing.